I don't think there is anything for me to add on. I think Vijay has already introduced me, so I'll just jump in right with the topic that I'm going to talk about. I would be talking about maintaining a design system. I would start with a quote by Nathan Curtis where it says that a design system isn't a project, it's a product serving products. This quote generally tells us about the perspective or the approach we should be having while we approach or we come across a design system. And that's what I would be talking about. A company takes a lot of time to come to build their design system, and it is very unique to that company because of its because of its people and so on. And it takes a lot of time to come up with a set of guiding principles, establish the foundation elements, and also come across the also design the UI patterns. But we still invest the time creating one because we know it's worth it, because at the end of the day, scalability, consistency in design and improved team collaboration are some things that make us realize ki, okay, it might take some while, but design systems are really worth their while. But many a times what happens is that even despite everyone's best intention, all the efforts that the product team makes in building a design system can just run down the drain. And most of the time it happens because we kind of lack in understanding the fact that the goal of a design system isn't just to guide the initial product development. It definitely smoothens the process, but it's not the only reason why we should have one. It's a useful resource to help you in managing and maintaining your product going forward. And that's the reason why we should also maintain, update, and involve our design system just like we do to our products. In this segment, we would be talking about three major topics, that is, how to approach a design system, how to promote and encourage usage, and how to communicate updates. Talking about the first thing about how to approach a design system, these are few points that we can just talk about. That is, embrace your complexity, encourage adoption, treat your design system like a design problem, prioritize dedicated resources. Now, a design team takes a lot of time to come across a design system, and it becomes very overwhelming for each and every one of us to just look at the design system when we are done. There are so many components, so many number of styles, and so many variants of one component. And it at times it becomes really overwhelming. Am I still connected?
Yeah, you are. Please continue.
Oh, sorry, there was some glitch from my end. Yeah. So at it's really overwhelming to see the number of components that as a team we have built. And fun fact about it is that the first wrap of native base V3 Figma components had just 29 components, but it had over 780 variants. And when we moved on with those components, these components did not even include the different states that we have for, like, for example, default, hover, pressed, or many more. And when we just have to talk about just one component, so for example, button, initially it had only 144 variants, and just as soon as we started looking at the different states of that one single component of a button, we ended up having 816 variants, which is much more than the existing number here itself. It's good that we did not have that calculation earlier, because otherwise the design team would be taking some anxiety issues. Moving forward, embracing your complexity is something that we need to work on. With the number of teams using a system, evolving a growing system is only natural. Try not to get overwhelmed by the number of components that you have, the combinations of style that you have, or the permutation of variants that you will have in a design system. uh, Once we are done with building a design system, the next most important thing is to encourage people to use that design system. It makes no sense if we have put so much of effort in building a design system, and at the end of the day we are still designing something from scratch. We need to use those components, we need to attach those styles and guidelines and follow what the design system already states. So encourage adoption is something that we really need to look into. A design system sets a new direction for an organization, and whether the organization accepts this direction will largely depend on how people react to the changes. Next thing is that when treat your design system like a design problem. We need to remind ourselves about the initial design processes would help us gain better understanding. We cannot lose track of our process and our priority that were already set. We need to remind ourselves about the goals that we decided earlier and treat it like a design problem. We Once we are done with the adoption, there would be multiple teams cross functioning on the same design system, and we need a dedicated resources and structure of people who would be working on the design system. If your design system is going to operate like a product, it needs a dedicated engineering, designing, and product management resources. Establish rituals and process that give your team tangible goals and focus. The next thing we would be talking about is how to promote and encourage the usage. We should never stop growing. That's one thing about the people say that design system kind of restrict the creativity of a person, but we need to understand that it's more about the governance and not the restriction. Everybody can be an initiator of change, speaking a common language and having an onboarding documentation. So let me tell you one thing. You will change your product. Your product will change. You will add new pages. You will change the color. You might even change the primary color later. You will add components. You will swap components. You will change the contents and everything. But whenever you do these changes, it should reflect back to your design system. And we need to understand that we should never stop growing. In order to make sweeping changes to your products and keep tabs on the latest guidelines, trends, components, and design patterns, our design system needs to be updated very every now and then. And we can it's like our judicial system. We have a very structure, we have a foundation structure, but as the society grows, we need to update them. The next thing is that as a team, everybody should be an initiator. uh, Irrespective of what role you perform, if you are a part of the core design system team or not, if you come across any component or any such instance where you feel that there is a lack of a component, or you feel something can be improved, you should initiate a talk. Some Here are some points which we can keep in mind while so that we can make sure that everybody is an equal contributor. And that's listen and always ask why. Voice your opinion irrespective of your role. Make designers and developers your own product teams the primary contributors, and define a change management process. The next thing is having a common language. Like, people have nicknames, I have four, but in design system it doesn't work like that. We need to speak a common language. Engineers and designers alike can work through a problem together only because they understand each other. We kind of need to, it's high time we kind of need to merge that gap between designers and developers. Like, for example, in our team, instead of referring a color shade with their hex code, we kind of try to use the token name. Like, for us, this is primary 400, and this just helps us to communicate better with anybody in the team. The next thing would be, like, as your team expands, people will join, and you need to have a proper documentation so that everybody is on the same page, including the newbies. So having an onboarding documentation is really important. Documenting the principles of your design system and how it fundamentally works for all who use it will pay off on the long run. The third thing is, how will you communicate your updates? This consolidation process can be broken down into few very small steps. Like I already mentioned, our goal is for everyone to take an initiative. Everybody should feel empowered to suggest or even ask questions for that fact. So basically, taking an initiative is the first step. The second would be exploring opportunities around the new proposal and such as improvements to solve it. We need to question and understand if like, did somebody miss a documentation? Do we already have that one thing, or does any other component solve this problem? So we need to explore opportunities and also discuss about the new solution that we can come up with. The next step would be discussion. The goal here is to understand different perspective around the solution. Critiquing the proposal from multiple angles is necessary to strengthen the applicability. So, if is it feasible in terms of design, in terms of code? If we do something like this, will it make some breaking changes or not? There needs to be such discussion for a clearer understanding. The next step would be updating, of course. Once the consolidation has proven successful, you can implement the change by renewing the components page in Figma and then updating the same in the code base. Once you're done updating, a proper documentation of the change log is really important. This type of record has its own format for various types of projects, but generally, it's useful showing which component has been changed, where the changes were made, why the changes were made, and who made these changes. So, I mean, just to sum up everything, here are the three takeaways that I could just say is: one, do not get overwhelmed with the complexity of design system. We have a lot of complexity in our lives. We don't want to add more. The second would be, do not restrict yourself to ask questions, irrespective of the fact that whoever you are, you don't have to think, I'm a designer, I shouldn't be asking something related to code. It's okay. Ask. There would be somebody, you might not understand 100%, but I think it would still add up to your skills that way. And the last point would be, allow your design system to grow. We don't want to be it like a restriction. If your design system grows with your product, I think the chances of creative restriction or freedom would be very low. I think that's all from me.